The Marvel Rivals Invitational has finally kicked off with many top teams and players that you might recognize, including orgs like Luminosity and Fnatic. In analyzing many of the pro matches, I've found many of the meta characters that are seeing the most play, and underrated characters that you might not expect to be extremely dominant in this new emerging meta. That's why we're going to break down all the best compositions and interesting characters that are seeing play that you are underrating. But if you enjoy this type of content, smash that like, subscribe, and let me know down below what other content you want to see, and let's get into it. Now, of course, in the pro scene, there are bans just like in ranked play from Diamond and beyond, but they also have protects, where both teams get to protect one character on each side after the first round of bans have gone through. This could dramatically change what composition sees play, but let me name a lot of the bans and some of the protects as well, so you know what are the building blocks for many of these compositions or really strong outliers that people are respecting. For bans in the support category, it's Loki and Luna as the two most powerful supports that are seeing play. Loki is incredibly powerful, and we'll go into more detail on that in a second. A character that is the building block for a lot of compositions, incredibly versatile, provides a lot of offensive capabilities, has really powerful support ult combinations, and in general is just an all-around great character with great synergy with characters like Hela. Loki is phenomenal and is a character that can be banned, although when he's not, he's almost always played, and Luna is very similarly. Luna also enables characters like Namor a lot, which is seeing quite a bit of pro play. We'll talk about that more later as well. Now, Hela is the character that gets banned more than almost any other character. Hela is phenomenal, especially in the hands of amazing aimers, and with Loki being so strong, being able to resurrect a Loki with a kill or a Thor in some cases, we'll talk more about that later. Hela is phenomenal and banned quite often. Wolverine is also a character that is banned quite often, very strong, although there are some ways to shut it down, which we will talk about a little more later. Bucky is also seeing a lot of play, and Namor, we'll talk more about those later, and those two are targets for bans sometimes. Storm as well, occasionally, and she can also be played in the composition we'll feature. Characters like Venom and Groot are also banned or protected as well. Venom is more of a specialist character. Some teams like Luminosity really like to play Venom, but because they do, they get target banned a lot more. And then Groot is the building block of this first composition that we'll talk about. Now let me talk about this composition that, especially on the maps without a lot of verticality, is one of the strongest compositions, and I would say that there are going to be variations to this, but this is like the core composition that, you know, if you could play in your games, I would recommend, because it's super strong, and I don't actually think it's that hard to play. So here's the composition: Groot, Strange, Loki, Luna, Bucky, Namor. This is the composition that a lot of teams are playing, and a lot of teams are even mirroring. It's a very strong composition. So what exactly does this composition do? Why is it so strong, and why is it a composition that I think is one of the strongest you could play? And even in ranked play, I think it's actually really strong even towards its skill floor. So first off is space control. So Groot is a character that can wall off lines of sight, cut enemies off from their team, and in general forces a pretty close, effective fight with the enemy team. So Groot gets to cut off lines of sight, cut off tanks, pressure tanks, and pressure cooldowns, because tanks get basically cut off from the rest of their team, and anything that gets in close range risks death with the Groot and Bucky together, because Bucky gets a hook on a Magneto or any other character, and the Groot is going to wall off that target, and that person, unless they have some type of vertical mobility, they're just going to get killed. So this combo together is really powerful, and it just confirms the kill every time a Bucky hits a hook. So if your Bucky hits consistent hooks, you're going to win fights in the neutral very easily. This means that tanks have to be very afraid of fighting anywhere near you or making a mistake anywhere around you, and it's a lot of pressure, and you're forcing these engagements in the way you want to. Groot and Strange together apply a lot of frontline pressure. You'll get to walk around the map and force these engagements that you want, and if you ever get close, you basically just kill the target. Also, the added benefit of Bucky plus Namor plus Loki means that you're never gonna die to anything dive oriented. You're actually gonna be very strong against any dive character or any character that wants to go after your team. So basically, dive compositions are almost impossible to run, and even characters like Venom can be very difficult to play without added support or specific bans to break up this basically anti-dive comp. Now that alone isn't good enough, because the composition does more. It also has great combo potential. So Groot ult plus Namor ult is extremely powerful and typically ends up in a kill. Groot ult plus Bucky ult can be amazing, especially when we talk about Loki being so dominant. Bucky being able to reset his ultimate off of Loki clones is incredibly important right now. And being able to combo this into a Groot ult, and even if there's a ton of totems and a ton of clones, you're still going to get a ton of damage in there, and with focus fire you can burst through it. That's incredibly strong. And when two Lunas are ulting, or when there's a Luna ulting on your team, being able to swap to damage boost in the moment that Namor pops his ultimate is going to get more consistent mid-fight kills, which is super strong and in general could win you fights outright. I think if you're playing this composition, you need to have really good communication between the Groot, the Bucky, the Namor, and the Luna. A lot of y'all need to be on the exact same page about how you're going to cycle your ultimates. The Luna needs to be ready to swap to damage in her ultimate when Namor ults. The Groot needs to make sure that his teammates are ready to combo with them, and the Namor and Bucky need to make sure not to ult together into the Groot ult. And I mentioned that Loki is just super dominant right now in general, extremely flexible ultimate. Totem is just really strong and oftentimes will force a combo, because if you're just gonna Groot ult and try to kill people, totems will keep you alive, so it forces enemies to double invest ultimates at least in order to break apart the Loki totems and finish off players in the Groot ult. And if Hela is unbanned for whatever reason, Loki getting free resurrects is insane, but Hela does get banned quite a bit. There are some times where she's not, because there are a lot of threats right now and a lot of characters that are worthy of a ban, so there's many things that slip through the cracks. Now, in the case that Loki gets banned, then typically the support that you go to is Invisible Woman, and you play a backline of Luna, Invisible Woman, or if Luna is banned, then Invisible Woman will be played instead of her. So these are the top 3 supports that are seeing play in this type of composition. Typically, Loki is the character you really want to play, and then Luna or Invisible Woman, but you basically do any 2 combinations of the 3. Now, if Bucky or Namor is banned, then you'll typically run a Storm. Storm plays really well in this composition. Instead of the kill presence of a character like Bucky, you add constant pressure to your team, typically playing with them and enabling them, giving them more damage overall, and applying extra bits of pressure with a really powerful ultimate. Now, if you have a Luna, Luna will keep Snowflake on you and keep you up. If you have an Invisible Woman, she'll constantly be trying to shield you so that you get easier lines of sight against the enemy and can be a bit more proactive with your long distance damage. You will basically have a lot of poke damage, and you're helping your team apply more poke damage as well. Now, in the case of a Strange ban, Mag is played instead, and I think that Strange or Mag can kind of be interchangeable, although notably the ability for Strange to fly up past getting walled off is important. There are times where a Mag will get caught out, get walled off, and then he can't retreat in the same way that a Strange can. Now, I did talk about ways to shut down Wolverine specifically, because we all know how strong Wolverine is, and with Groot seeing play, Wolverine is very good against Groot, and Groot is very strong in general in the meta, but there is a composition that players are going to shut down Wolverine. So Twisted Minds has the best Wolverine player in the world, Team Captain, and they're up against Ecstatic. Now, knowing that you're going to be up against the top tier Wolverine, you would normally ban the Wolverine, right? But that's not what this team actually opted to do. What they have is they have an alternate composition where they swap to Mag plus the Thing, and this composition is incredibly strong versus Wolverine. Not only can the Thing not get grabbed, Mag can protect himself, and he can also enable the Thing, and this is actually the building block for many other compositions we'll talk about in a second, and it was something that they could use to shut down the Wolverine without having to ban it and use a ban on something else. It's a funny cat and mouse game here, because Team Captain didn't play Wolverine throughout the majority of this map because he knew that the enemy team was going to be on that Mag Thing, but once he stopped playing it, they swapped back to the group composition, and not thinking that he would whip out the Wolverine, they played the group composition on a first point hold, and knowing that they would do that, or predicting they would do that, Team Captain came out on Wolverine, got a free kill, and won that fight. They swapped to the Mag Thing, and he swapped off right to Namor. Very interesting cat and mouse game here, but it shows that you can counter certain characters with your picks, and you don't necessarily need to ban them. I think as the pro scene develops, it's going to be very interesting when certain players are very good at characters. How do you deal with them? Do you consistently try to ban them, or are you trying to develop counter strategies so you're not forced to ban them every single game? Now, also in general, this Magneto Thing composition is very strong, and here's how the comp plays, and here's how you will play it. So, the Thing is going to be someone that is going to be applying a lot of pressure, capable of constantly brawling, and Magneto can bubble him in so that he can be even more aggressive than normal. And one of the things that's very interesting here is that the Thing gets to free farm his ult when he is fighting in support ult. So, there's a lot of situations where you have a Loki and a Luna, and your Loki is, of course, going to copy a Luna ult. So, basically, you have 2 Luna ults, which is 24 seconds of ult time, and the enemy does as well. So there's a ton of these fights where you're just kind of there and no one's dying, right? Nothing's gonna die here unless you have some sort of combo where you're just constantly trading damage and trying to build up ultimates inside support ults where no one is dying. And the thing operates in that environment the best, where he's constantly swinging and swinging and swinging and building up ultimates and just gets to constantly beat face in. Nothing is dying, of course, but he's building up an ultimate very quickly. So he can go from an ultimate, maybe he ulted to start off the whole ult cycle on both sides, and by the time it's over, he has another ultimate. So that's a very powerful thing the thing can do, and it's a really important thing to think about when you're playing in this composition. How fast is that thing building ultimate, and where is he positioned in these ult fights? Now, of course, Magneto is still trying to hunt supports with his ultimate, and there's a lot of supports that you can kill with your ultimate. Even someone like Luna, if you got enough damage absorbed or you have team focus fire, you can kill Luna's ult as well, and you're going to get that focus fire in a coordinated team. Now, I did want to talk specifically about the Thing, a character that is actually on the rise, seeing more and more pro play, and I think it's actually a character that I would recommend picking up. Very strong as an anti-dive tank, capable of disrupting a lot of dives with a stun that lasts a really long time and prevents mobility. Very good in compositions like with Magneto, as a character that gets to apply pressure and then come back to his team very safely. He's almost like an extension of a Brawl, where Magneto is staying a little bit further back and stabilizes the objective. The Thing goes in and applies pressure to certain areas and forces a response or baits out certain ultimates. Plus, he has a very powerful ultimate as well. He's a flexible tank that isn't very difficult to learn, and I would recommend learning him sooner rather than later. He's going to be a staple going forward. Then to talk about some other compositions that are seeing play, we are seeing some Adam plus Mantis plus Star-Lord. This Trinergy is extremely powerful, and we're seeing it quite a bit, although normally this is played with the third support. Now, the tank line here is pretty flexible. We're seeing stuff like the Thing and Mag. We're seeing Groot Stranges. We're seeing Groot Mags. There's a lot of flexibility here. I really do think that Adam, Mantis, Star-Lord shines the most when you have some verticality that you want to challenge. Having that Star-Lord and having that range damage and just the ability for Adam to provide some additional support and damage capability from range is all good here. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see more Adam, Mantis, Star-Lord cores forming as time goes on. This is something that's already being experimented with and is gonna consistently see play. Now, I do want to talk about Venom, because Venom's a character that is actually really strong and in some cases are even banned, mainly played with Mag. And this is the interesting thing about Venom, is that similar to the Thing, Venom's a character that plays with Mag, a non-dive tank. Like, Mag isn't going in with Venom, and you would think from other games, let's say Overwatch or whatever, you would think dive composition, you want two hypermobile tanks to go in together. But that's not how Venom is seeing play. Basically, Venom is creating pressure and applying pressure, trying to bait out cooldowns, force responses, and give his team an advantage. Mag can help this by being able to poke from range, but he can also bubble into Venom and prevent him from getting crowd controlled or stunned by anything else, and he stabilizes objectives a lot better. I think having a tank that gets to just chill around on point in some situations, especially during these long duration fights where there's ultimates being popped, nothing's able to be killed, you don't want to have to give up objective and have it flip. So in a lot of these compositions, we're not seeing double divers nearly as much, although there are some interesting use cases. I saw a couple of interesting compositions here and there. Like Twisted Minds was actually on Thor Cap very briefly on one map, and they won the objective with it. But for the most part, you're seeing some type of dive threat or mobility threat, some type of initiator, I would say, whether it's Mag or whether it's Thing, even though they operate in different ways, and then an enabler, like a catalyst, so like Mag, which is interesting. Now, one of the teams that specialize in Venom is Luminosity, and that's because Trust Me is an amazing Venom player. But the thing is, this team is really good at Venom, and they have a very good Venom player, but they get banned. Like, most of the time I watched them, they were getting target banned. So it's interesting when you have really, really great players on certain characters, it might force the enemy team to ban them, but it also keeps more things open. So you're more likely to have like a Hela unbanned or certain things unbanned. So having characters that are really good at certain things force the enemy team to ban it, and then you get to play, you know, more flexibly. Your other composition or your secondary composition is going to be banned less, because if they have to ban your Venom, they can't ban the Groot, or they can't ban the Loki, or, you know, there's always things that kind of slip through the cracks, and that's one of the things that's so interesting about the pro scene and Rivals with the picks and bans. Now, if you are going going to commit to the Venom, you typically want to ban certain characters. I think especially characters like Namor and Bucky can be a little frustrating. So you do want to enable it, but a good Venom backed by good support can make it work even against a lot of the counters because, you know, get that mag bubble, know when to disengage. Venom's still very, very hard to kill and forces a lot of cooldowns, a lot of responses. If you force the enemy Bucky to hook you 24/7, and you still live, he's not getting kills in the, you know, the pre-fight or the mid-fight. So that's still really strong. And then Venom Ultimate, typically want to combo that with the damage amp from Luna, swapping the ultimate to damage so that you can get more guaranteed value and try to generate a pick. So Venom's super strong. I think it's a really underrated character just in general in ranked play. And if you want to get really great at Venom, I would highly recommend analyzing some of the Venom pro play that you see, because he's a character that if you get good enough with him, you can demand respect. So yeah. Now I do want to talk about Thor, because Thor actually saw some interesting play here and there. A character that didn't see consistent play, but teams like Fnatic would occasionally play this character, and especially on maps with verticality, having a Thor that could go contest high ground DPS was really, really strong. And we saw Thor as kind of like a flexible pick that would see play in some of those situations, because if you played like a low ground map that didn't have verticality, all of a sudden you would just like lose to DPS setting up on the high ground, being able to play wherever they wanted to, basically getting to fight you uncontested. Now, also in the case that Hela wasn't banned, the Hela Thor Loki synergy is extremely difficult to overcome if your Hela player is just amazing. So on your team, if you have a Hela player that's just, you know, phenomenal, you want to basically force your opponent through this cat and mouse game of banning and protecting to not ban Loki or freaking Hela, and then Thor just becomes a phenomenal pick. Being able to resurrect both of them with one kill is just crazy. Having all these compounding synergies in a composition is also just very strong. And really, as the meta develops and we see a lot of really great uses for many different interesting characters, I'm really excited to see how it further develops. Now, let me quickly go over tank, DPS, and support, give you recommendations of characters I would suggest picking up and what to work on if you're gonna pick up these characters. For tank, I would undoubtedly recommend Groot. Groot is phenomenal right now, and especially if you're banning Wolverine in your ranked games, Groot can carry harder than any tank in my personal opinion. He just does so much, has so much combo potential, and is just really forcing the enemy to play on his pace. Groot's amazing, and I would recommend learning him right now. The number one tip I'll give you is think of your walls as an extension of existing walls to cut off line of sight. I think the biggest mistake a lot of group players make is they fight too far away from cover into the open, and then they have to use like all their walls just to wall off one person instead of creating one angle of separation, because they're playing close to a wall, hugging a corner, and then cutting off enemies with like the least amount of resources possible. You're doing the most with that little resource. Now, the other tank I would recommend is, of course, the Thing. The Thing is so freaking strong. He's just one of those tanks that I think has a ton of potential going forward. I think the combo with Magneto is amazing against any composition in ranked, but against dive compositions, using him as an anti-diver is also really, really good. Now, for supports, Loki, Luna, Invisible Woman, I cannot recommend these characters enough, especially Loki. The potential for Loki is so high. There's a reason that there's so many top 500 players that are Loki one-tricks primarily, a character that almost never gets banned in ranked play, but has some of the highest impact out of any character in the entire game. Loki's so freaking strong, from his totem placement to his ability to off angle and apply pressure. And that's the thing about Loki, he's confirming kills, he's applying pressure. And the number one tip I'll give you on Loki is if you're ever pushing an objective or trying to go push an objective, I want you to take an alternate angle with the DPS or tank. Don't just go for main all the time. Don't just stand main. Loki can take high ground, Loki can take off angles, he can simultaneously heal his team and apply pressure to the targets your team are on. Very, very strong threat. Now, last, for DPS, I would say there's a lot of recommendations for you. There's a ton of really strong DPS right now, from Hela to Wolverine to Bucky to Namor to Storm. These are some extremely powerful DPS, and understanding not just how to play these, but how you should change how you play depending on what you're up against, right? Namor wants to get more aggressive with off angles and provide more pressure when he's not up against the dive composition. He doesn't want to just sit in his back line, because right here, his job is not to deny aggression because there's no divers coming into his team. So understanding how your role changes with your DPS is very important. But of course, this is just a little insight into some of the pro matches right now in Marvel Rivals and some interesting meta implications for that. I'm going to continuously update you on this channel of many of the new developments and new meta strategies that teams are making, including breakdowns into specific matches, especially when we get closer to the finals for every single region. So if you're really interested, definitely let me know if you like this type of content down below. And I really want to thank y'all for being here. Smash the like and subscribe if you enjoy. Check out the Marvel Rivals Academy if you want to get better. And I'll see you next time.